The gunshot rang out before Adelaide Norwood could even process the danger, her hand already moving beneath the folds of her calico skirt to where the twin Colt revolvers rested in their specially sewn holsters against her thighs. She had exactly 3 seconds to decide if she would reveal her secret or watch the mountain man with the broad shoulders and sun-weathered face bleed out on the dusty floor of Patterson's trading post in Trinidad, Colorado. It was August of 1873, and Adelaide had been in this rough trading post for less than 15 minutes, purchasing supplies for her small homestead 6 miles outside of town. The building smelled of tobacco, leather, and the distinctive tang of animal pelts that hung from the rafters. She had noticed the massive man the moment she walked in, not just because of his size, though he stood well over 6 feet with shoulders that seemed to fill the doorway, but because of the way he carried himself with a quiet watchfulness that reminded her of a wolf surveying unfamiliar territory. His hair fell past his shoulders in dark waves, and his arms, exposed by his rolled-up sleeves, showed muscles built from years of surviving in the mountains. The trouble had started when 3 drifters walked in, their intentions written plainly in their bloodshot eyes and the way their hands hovered near their weapons. They had been drinking, that much was obvious, and they had decided the mountain man looked like an easy target for robbery. They were wrong. The first shot came from the leader, a wiry man with a scar running down his left cheek. He fired without warning, aiming for the mountain man's back while he examined a new rifle at the counter. Adelaide saw it happen as if time had slowed. The mountain man began to turn, his reflexes impressive even caught off guard, but he would not be fast enough. Adelaide's right hand found the grip of her pistol, drawing it in one fluid motion that years of practice had perfected. Her shot rang out a fraction of a second after the drifters, and his bullet went wide, splintering the wooden post beside the mountain man's head. Her bullet found its mark in the drifter's shoulder, spinning him around and sending his weapon clattering to the floor. The trading post erupted into chaos. The mountain man had his own weapon drawn now, covering the other 2 drifters who stood frozen in shock. Adelaide had already drawn her second pistol, both weapons steady in her hands as she stepped forward, her green eyes hard as flint. The 4 other customers in the store had scattered, and Patterson, the proprietor, had ducked behind his counter. "Drop your weapons," Adelaide said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Her southern accent, usually soft and melodic, carried steel underneath. "Drop them now, or the next shot goes somewhere more permanent." The wounded drifter was groaning on the floor, clutching his shoulder as blood seeped between his fingers. His 2 companions looked between Adelaide and the mountain man, clearly reassessing their life choices. Their pistols hit the floor with heavy thuds. "Smart," the mountain man said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to resonate in Adelaide's chest. His eyes, she noticed now, were a striking gray-blue, like mountain lakes in winter. He kept his own weapon trained on the drifters as he moved to kick their guns away. "Patterson, send your boy for the marshal." Patterson's teenage son scrambled out the back door, nearly tripping over himself in his haste. The mountain man moved with practiced efficiency, keeping the drifters covered while pulling leather strips from his pack to bind their hands. Only then did he turn his full attention to Adelaide, and she felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. "You saved my life, madam," he said, studying her with open curiosity. She was still holding both pistols, though she had lowered them slightly. "Those are some fine weapons, and you handle them like you were born with them in your hands." Adelaide felt heat rise in her cheeks, though whether from embarrassment at the attention or the intensity of his stare, she could not say. She carefully lowered the hammers on both pistols and slid them back into their holsters beneath her skirts. The mountain man's eyes followed the movement, his expression thoughtful. "My father believed a woman should know how to protect herself," Adelaide said, lifting her chin slightly. "He taught me to shoot when I was 12 years old. I've carried these pistols every day since he died 4 years ago." "Your father was a wise man," the mountain man said. He holstered his own weapon and extended his hand. "Owen Lancaster, I trap in the mountains north of here. Come down every few months for supplies." Adelaide placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses that spoke of hard work and harder living. His hand engulfed hers, warm and solid. "Adelaide Norwood." "I have a homestead west of town alone?" Owen asked, and there was something in his tone that made it clear he was not judging, merely trying to understand. "Alone," Adelaide confirmed. "My father and I came out here together 3 years ago from Tennessee. He passed from fever that first winter. I have managed on my own since then." Owen's expression shifted, respect mingling with what might have been concern. "That takes considerable strength, Miss Norwood. This is hard country for anyone, let alone a woman on her own." Before Adelaide could respond, Marshal William Crane arrived, a man in his 50s with a thick mustache and a no-nonsense demeanor. He took in the scene with practiced eyes, listening as Owen and Adelaide both gave their accounts of what had happened. The wounded drifter was groaning louder now, demanding medical attention, while his companions stood sullenly with their hands bound. "Doc Miller's office is 2 buildings down," Crane told his deputy, who hauled the wounded man to his feet none too gently. "Get him patched up enough to stand trial. These 3 have been causing trouble up and down the territory. There's paper on them from Kansas." As the marshal and his deputy herded the drifters out, Patterson emerged from behind his counter, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "Damned excitement for a Tuesday afternoon," he muttered. "Miss Norwood, Mr. Lancaster, your purchases are on the house today. Least I can do after you kept those vultures from robbing me blind." Adelaide started to protest, but Patterson waved her off. "I insist you both did this town a service." Owen helped Adelaide gather her supplies, flour and sugar and coffee, along with the fabric she had come to purchase. His own purchases were more extensive, clearly meant to last months in the wilderness. She noticed he moved with a slight limp, favoring his left leg. "Old injury?" she asked, nodding toward his leg as they loaded supplies into her wagon outside. Owen glanced down, seeming surprised she had noticed. "Grizzly bear 3 years back. I was not paying enough attention, got between a mother and her cubs. She reminded me of my mistake. I survived, but the leg never quite healed right. Does not slow me down much, but it aches when the weather turns cold." "My father used to make a salve," Adelaide said. "Willow bark and arnica mixed with bear grease. It helped with pain and inflammation. I still make it sometimes." "Might be I would trade for some of that," Owen said, securing the last of her supplies. "If you are willing to part with it." Adelaide found herself smiling. "I would be happy to. My homestead is about 6 miles west. Follow the creek road and look for the cottonwood grove. The cabin has blue shutters, only 1 for miles around." Owen nodded slowly, his eyes holding hers for a moment longer than strictly necessary. "I will remember that. I am staying at the boarding house tonight, heading back to the mountains tomorrow. But I come down regular. Next time I am in Trinidad, maybe I will ride out that way." "I would welcome the company," Adelaide said, and realized she meant it. Living alone for 2 years had been necessary, but it had also been lonely. Her nearest neighbor was 4 miles away, an elderly couple who kept to themselves. She made the trip to Trinidad once every few weeks for supplies and church on Sundays, but meaningful conversation was rare. Owen tipped his hat to her, a gesture that seemed oddly formal given that they had just survived a shooting together. "Until next time, Miss Norwood, and thank you again. I owe you my life." "You owe me nothing," Adelaide said firmly. "But I would not refuse that visit." She climbed onto her wagon, taking up the reins. As she guided the horses back toward the creek road, she could feel Owen's eyes on her back. She did not look around, but she found herself smiling nonetheless. The ride home gave her time to think about what had happened. She had revealed her secret, the pistols she carried everywhere, to a trading post full of witnesses. Word would spread of that, she had no doubt. Trinidad was small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business, and a woman who could shoot like a man was the kind of story that would be repeated in saloons and parlors alike. But as her cabin came into view, nestled in the cottonwood grove with the creek burbling nearby, Adelaide found she did not regret her choice. Owen Lancaster would be dead if she had hesitated, and that was unacceptable. She had not saved herself from the dangers of the frontier only to stand by while a good man died. The next few days passed in their usual rhythm. Adelaide tended her vegetable garden, fed her chickens, and worked on preserving the last of the summer vegetables for winter. She also found herself making a batch of the pain salve she had mentioned to Owen, using the precious bear grease she had traded for months ago, and gathering fresh willow bark from the trees by the creek. Sunday came, and Adelaide made the trip to Trinidad for church services. She attended the small Presbyterian church on the edge of town, more for the social connection than deep religious conviction, though she found comfort in the familiar hymns. As she had expected, several people approached her after the service, wanting to hear about the shooting at Patterson's trading post. "Is it true you had 2 pistols hidden under your dress?" Martha Henderson asked, her eyes wide with scandalized fascination. Martha was the wife of the town banker, a woman who prided herself on proper Eastern manners despite living in Colorado territory. I carry pistols for protection, Adelaide said evenly, as any sensible person would in this country, but under your dress, Martha pressed. It seems so unladylike. I would rather be unladylike than dead, Adelaide replied, her tone making it clear the conversation was over. She excused herself and moved toward where Reverend Thompson stood greeting parishioners. Miss Norwood, the Reverend said warmly. He was a kind man in his 40s who had always treated Adelaide with respect despite her unconventional situation. I heard about the incident at the trading post. You showed remarkable courage. I did what needed doing, Adelaide said. Nothing more. Sometimes that is the definition of courage, Reverend Thompson replied. Doing what needs doing when others would freeze. Adelaide appreciated his perspective more than he probably knew. She made her usual purchases in town, salt and lamp oil and a new hoe to replace the one that had broken, then headed back to her homestead. She had just finished unhitching the horses when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching. Her hand moved instinctively toward her skirts, then relaxed when she recognized Owen Lancaster riding toward her on a sturdy bay gelding. He sat the horse well despite his old injury, and in the afternoon sunlight she could see that his hair was not just dark brown but shot through with hints of deep auburn. Miss Norwood, Owen called as he drew near. I hope I am not intruding. Not at all, Adelaide said, surprised by how pleased she was to see him. I thought you would be back in the mountains by now. Owen dismounted with an easy grace that belied his size. I decided to stay in town a few extra days. Needed to have some repairs done on my saddle, and I realized I never properly thanked you for saving my life. Figured I would ride out, see if that offer of salve still stood. Of course, Adelaide said. I made a fresh batch just yesterday. Come inside, I will get it for you. Her cabin was small but well kept, a single room with a sleeping loft above. She had made it as comfortable as possible over the years. With curtains she had sewn herself, a braided rug on the floor, and her mother's china displayed on a shelf her father had built. Owen had to duck slightly to enter through the doorway, and his presence seemed to fill the small space. Adelaide retrieved the clay pot of salve from her shelf, along with a piece of clean cloth. Apply it twice daily to wherever the pain is worst, she instructed. It works best if you massage it in thoroughly. Owen accepted the pot, turning it in his large hands. What do I owe you? Nothing, Adelaide said. Consider it a thank you for helping with the situation at the trading post. I did not do much, Owen said honestly. You were the one who took the shot that mattered. I have been thinking about that, actually. About how fast you drew and how steady your aim was. That kind of skill does not come easy. Adelaide moved to the stove, where she had coffee staying warm. Coffee? She offered, and when Owen nodded, she poured 2 cups. They sat at her small table, and she found herself telling him about her father, a former Union officer who had seen too much death in the war and wanted nothing more than to escape to open country where a man, or a woman, could make something of themselves through honest work. He taught me everything, Adelaide said, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. How to shoot, how to track, how to read the weather and the land. He said a woman in the territories needed to be just as capable as any man, maybe more so because people would underestimate her. Your father was definitely a wise man, Owen said. My own father was a trapper like me. I grew up in the mountains of Montana Territory, learned the trade from him. He died when I was 19, caught in an avalanche. I have been on my own since then. Do you ever get lonely? Adelaide asked. Then immediately worried she had been too forward. But Owen did not seem offended. He considered the question seriously, staring into his coffee. Sometimes, he admitted. The mountains are beautiful, and there is a kind of peace up there that you cannot find anywhere else. But there are times, especially in the deep winter, when the snow is so thick you cannot leave your cabin for days, when the silence becomes oppressive. A man starts talking to himself just to hear a human voice. I know that feeling, Adelaide said softly. After my father died, there were weeks when I did not speak to another person. I started talking to the chickens. Owen's laugh was warm and genuine, transforming his weathered face. I talked to my mules. They are better conversationalists than most people anyway. They talked for over an hour, the conversation flowing easily in a way Adelaide had not experienced in years. Owen told her about his life in the mountains, the constant challenges of finding good trap lines, avoiding hostile encounters with wildlife and occasional dangerous men, and the satisfaction of living by his own skill and strength. Adelaide shared her struggles and triumphs in keeping the homestead running, the pride she felt in her garden, and the improvements she had made to the cabin. You have done remarkable work here, Owen said, glancing around the cabin again with obvious respect. This is not easy country for anyone. For a woman alone to not just survive but thrive, that is something special. I had no choice but to make it work, Adelaide said. Going back east was not an option. I had sold everything to come out here with my father. This land is all I have. Still, Owen said, many would have given up. You chose to stand and fight. The sun was beginning to set when Owen finally stood to leave. I have taken up too much of your time, he said. But I am grateful for the conversation as well as the salve. Will you come back? Adelaide asked, then felt her cheeks flush at her own boldness. Owen's smile was slow but genuine. If you would like me to, then yes. I will be heading back to my trap lines tomorrow, but I usually come to Trinidad every 6 weeks or so. Would it be acceptable if I stopped by next time? I would like that very much, Adelaide said. Owen mounted his horse, settling into the saddle with practiced ease. Until next time then, Miss Norwood, Adelaide, she said. Please call me Adelaide, Owen repeated, and the way he said her name, with that deep voice and careful pronunciation, made something flutter in her chest. And you should call me Owen. She watched him ride away until he disappeared around the bend in the creek road, then returned to her cabin feeling lighter than she had in months. She had not realized how much she had been craving companionship, real conversation with someone who understood the challenges of frontier life. The next 6 weeks passed slowly. Adelaide fell back into her routines, but now she found herself counting the days, wondering when Owen would return to Trinidad. She took extra care with her appearance on the days when she made trips to town, telling herself it was foolish but unable to stop hoping she might encounter him. It was mid-October when she saw him again. The aspen trees had turned gold in the mountains, and there was a crisp edge to the air that promised winter was coming. Adelaide was at Patterson's trading post, purchasing ammunition and kerosene. When Owen walked in, their eyes met across the store, and Owen's face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. He was dressed in buckskins now, his hair tied back, and he looked every inch the mountain man. He also looked thinner, as if the weeks in the mountains had burned away any excess weight, leaving only muscle and bone. Adelaide, he said, crossing to her in a few long strides. I was hoping I would find you here. I planned to ride out to your homestead tomorrow if I did not. It is good to see you, Owen, Adelaide said, and meant it more than he could possibly know. How was your time in the mountains? Profitable, Owen said. Got a good haul of beaver and marten pelts. But also colder than usual for this early in the season. I think we are in for a hard winter. They completed their purchases. Then Owen helped her load supplies into her wagon. Would you allow me to ride out with you? He asked. I would like to see how you have been doing, and I have been thinking about your offer of a home-cooked meal for months now. Adelaide laughed. I never offered you a meal. I know, Owen said, his eyes twinkling. But I am hoping you will anyway. Trail cooking gets tiresome after weeks of nothing but beans and bacon. I suppose I could manage something, Adelaide said, pretending to consider. I have a venison roast I was planning to cook tonight anyway. They rode together back to her homestead, Owen's horse tied to the back of her wagon. He told her about his time in the mountains, describing the changing leaves and early snows, a wolf pack he had observed from a distance, and the abandoned mining claim he had found that might be worth investigating come spring. At her cabin, Owen helped her unload supplies, then insisted on chopping firewood while she prepared dinner. Adelaide found herself acutely aware of him outside, the rhythmic sound of the axe-splitting wood, the glimpse of him through her window, his powerful shoulders and arms making short work of the logs. Dinner was venison roast with potatoes and carrots from her garden, biscuits with butter and apple pie she had made the day before. Owen ate with obvious appreciation, complimenting her cooking sincerely and without flattery. This is the best meal I have had in months, he said, possibly years. You have a real talent. It is simple food, Adelaide said, but she was pleased. Simple done well is better than fancy done poorly, Owen replied. Besides, after weeks of my own cooking, anything that does not taste like boot leather is a gift. After dinner, they sat by the fire, drinking coffee and talking. Owen asked about her homestead, and Adelaide showed him the improvements she had made, the new chicken coop she had built, and the repairs to her roof. He offered suggestions about preparing for winter, practical advice about insulation and food storage that showed his years of experience surviving harsh conditions. You should have at least a month's worth of supplies you can access even if you get snowed in, Owen said, and make sure you have multiple sources of fire. Keep kindling dry in different locations so if one area gets wet, you have backup. My father taught me most of that, Adelaide said. But I appreciate the reminders. It is easy to get complacent. Complacency kills out here, Owen said seriously. But I can see you take it seriously. Your preparations are better than some men I have known who have lived in the territories for decades. As the evening wore on, Adelaide realized she did not want Owen to leave. His presence felt natural in her small cabin, as if he belonged there. When he finally stood to go, it was full dark outside. I should head back to town, Owen said reluctantly. But Adelaide, I want to ask you something. Would you allow me to visit regularly? Not just when I am passing through Trinidad, but actually make the trip out here to see you. Adelaide felt warmth spread through her chest. I would like that very much. Good, Owen said, his relief evident, because I have thought about you every day since we met. I know that might sound forward, but I am too old and too tired of being alone to play games. You are remarkable, Adelaide Norwood. You are strong and capable and beautiful, and I would very much like to court you properly if you are willing. Adelaide stood, moving closer to him. In the firelight his eyes were intense but also uncertain, as if he feared she might reject him. I have thought about you too, she admitted, and yes. Owen Lancaster, you may court me. The smile that spread across Owen's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and when she did not, he cupped her face gently in his large hands. His palms were rough with calluses, but his touch was tender. May I kiss you? He asked, his voice rough. Yes, Adelaide whispered. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if Owen feared breaking something precious. But when Adelaide pressed closer, her hands coming up to rest on his chest where she could feel the solid strength of him and the steady beat of his heart, the kiss deepened. It was not her first kiss, but it was the first one that mattered, the first one that felt like a promise of something more. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, Owen rested his forehead against hers. I should definitely go now, he said, his voice strained, before I forget to be a gentleman. Adelaide laughed softly, stepping back. Come back soon as I can, Owen promised. I will need to make another run to the mountains, check my trap lines one more time before the deep snows come. But I will be back in 3 weeks. And Adelaide, when winter sets in hard, I would like to stay closer to town, to you. If that would be acceptable. More than acceptable, Adelaide said. Owen kissed her once more, quick and hard, then forced himself out the door. Adelaide stood in the doorway, watching him ride away, her fingers touching her lips where she could still feel the warmth of his kiss. The next 3 weeks were the longest of Adelaide's life. She threw herself into winter preparations, determined to have everything perfect. She repaired every weak board in her cabin, insulated the walls with additional mud chinking, and stocked her fruit cellar until it was overflowing. She also made new curtains, telling herself it had nothing to do with Owen's impending return, even as she chose the prettiest fabric from her limited options. True to his word, Owen returned on a crisp November morning when frost covered the ground. Adelaide heard his horse approaching and rushed outside, not caring that she probably looked too eager. Owen dismounted and swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around before kissing her soundly. I missed you, he said against her lips. Every day in those mountains, all I could think about was getting back to you. I missed you too, Adelaide admitted. Her arms wrapped around his neck. They spent the day together, and Owen revealed his plan. I have been thinking, he said, about what it would take to move my operation closer to here. I could still work my trap lines in the mountains, but base myself in Trinidad or nearby during the winter months, maybe even build a small cabin on the edge of your property, if you would allow it. You could stay here, Adelaide heard herself say. With me. Owen went very still. Adelaide, I do not want to compromise your reputation. People already talk, I am sure, about me visiting. Let them talk, Adelaide said. I have spent 2 years alone, Owen. 2 years of silence and loneliness and wondering if this was all my life would ever be. I do not want to waste time worrying about what people think. I want to be with you. Then marry me, Owen said simply. Not because of propriety or reputation, but because I love you. I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a few months, but I am certain. I want to spend my life with you, Adelaide. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you in my arms every night. I want to build a life together, face whatever comes together. Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes. I love you too, she said. Yes, Owen, yes, I will marry you. The kiss that followed was deeper and more passionate than any before, full of promise and desire and love. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless and flushed. "How soon?" Owen asked. "I do not want to wait, neither do I," Adelaide said. "We can go to Trinidad tomorrow, speak to Reverend Thompson. He can marry us this week if we want." "Then that is what we will do," Owen said. They spent the rest of the day making plans, talking about their future. Owen would continue trapping in the mountains during the season, but he would base himself from Adelaide's homestead, expanding the cabin and improving the property. Adelaide would continue her garden and chickens, and they would work together to build something lasting. That night, Owen slept in the barn, insisting on propriety until they were properly wed, despite Adelaide's protests. But they stayed up late talking, sitting close together by the fire, stealing kisses and making plans until Adelaide could barely keep her eyes open. The next morning, they rode together to Trinidad. Reverend Thompson was delighted by their news and agreed to perform the ceremony in 3 days, giving them time to obtain the necessary license and allowing word to spread to anyone who might want to attend. Those 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Adelaide chose her best dress, a deep blue calico that brought out her eyes, and worked on small preparations for the modest celebration they planned after the ceremony. Owen spent his time selling his pelts and purchasing supplies they would need for the winter, as well as a simple gold band for Adelaide's finger. On the morning of their wedding, Adelaide woke early, nervous energy thrumming through her. Martha Henderson and a few other women from church had offered to help her prepare, and despite their previous judgment, Adelaide accepted gratefully. They helped arrange her hair, pinning it up in a style more elaborate than Adelaide usually wore, and Martha even lent her a lace shawl that had belonged to her mother. The wedding ceremony took place in the small church, which was surprisingly full. Many townspeople had come, curious about the unusual couple and genuinely happy for them. Adelaide's nearest neighbors, the elderly Johnsons, were there, smiling warmly. Patterson from the trading post attended, as did Marshall Crane and several others they had met. But Adelaide only had eyes for Owen as she walked down the short aisle. He stood at the front in clean buckskins, his hair neatly tied back, his expression a mixture of awe and fierce devotion that made her heart clench. When she reached him and placed her hand in his, she felt the slight tremor in his fingers and realized he was just as nervous as she was. Reverend Thompson's words washed over her, the traditional vows that countless couples had spoken before them. But when Owen said, "I do," his voice was strong and certain, and when it was her turn, Adelaide spoke with equal conviction. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Thompson said, smiling broadly. "Owen, you may kiss your bride." Owen cupped Adelaide's face in his hands just as he had the first time he kissed her, and touched his lips to hers with reverent tenderness. The kiss was brief, appropriate for their public audience, but it held a promise of more to come. The celebration afterward was held at Patterson's trading post, which had been cleared and decorated for the occasion. There was food and music, a fiddle player providing entertainment and genuine warmth from the community. Adelaide danced with Owen, his strong arms guiding her with surprising grace for a man his size. "Happy," Owen murmured in her ear as they swayed together. "More than I knew I could be," Adelaide replied honestly. As the sun began to set, they made their excuses and left, riding together back to the homestead that was now truly theirs. Owen had already moved his belongings from the boarding house that morning, his few possessions fitting easily into the small cabin. Inside, with the door closed and the fire crackling, they stood facing each other. Adelaide felt nervous suddenly, despite her earlier boldness. Owen seemed to sense her uncertainty. He moved slowly, giving her time to adjust, and when he kissed her, it was with the same gentleness he had shown before. "We have all the time in the world," he said softly. "There is no rush." But Adelaide did not want to wait anymore. She had spent 2 years alone, and now she had this strong, gentle man who looked at her like she hung the moon. She reached up and began unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers slightly unsteady but determined. Owen's breath caught, but he stood still, letting her set the pace. When his shirt fell open, revealing the broad expanse of his chest covered in dark hair and crossed with old scars from his dangerous life, Adelaide placed her palms against his skin, feeling the heat of him and the rapid beat of his heart. "Adelaide," Owen said, his voice strained. "Are you certain?" "I am certain," she said, meeting his eyes. "I want this. I want you." What followed was tender and passionate by turns, Owen taking his time to ensure Adelaide's comfort, whispering words of love and devotion as they learned each other's bodies. When they finally came together, it was with a sense of rightness that went beyond physical pleasure. a joining that felt like coming home. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Adelaide's small bed, which would definitely need to be replaced with something larger soon. Owen's arms were wrapped around her, one large hand stroking gently through her unbound hair. "I love you," Owen said into the darkness. "I know I have said it before, but I need you to know how much I mean it. You are everything to me, Adelaide." "I love you too," Adelaide whispered. "I never thought I would find this. I had accepted that I would be alone. You will never be alone again," Owen promised. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Winter set in hard a week after their wedding, just as Owen had predicted. The snow came heavy and frequent, sometimes trapping them in the cabin for days at a time. But far from being oppressive, Adelaide found those snowbound days to be some of the happiest of her life. She and Owen settled into an easy domesticity, working together on projects to improve the cabin and property, cooking together, and spending long evenings talking or simply sitting in comfortable silence. Owen proved to be an attentive and affectionate husband. He brought Adelaide coffee in bed in the mornings, insisted on doing the heavy work despite her protests that she was capable, and found small ways to show his love every day. He also taught her new skills, sharing his vast knowledge of tracking and trapping, and seemed genuinely interested in learning from her about gardening and preserving food. They also continued to discover each other physically, the initial awkwardness giving way to deepening passion and intimacy. Owen was always careful with his strength, gentle despite his size, and Adelaide felt cherished in a way she had never experienced before. Christmas came, and they celebrated quietly together. Adelaide made a special dinner using precious stores of flour and sugar to bake treats. Owen surprised her with a gift he had been secretly working on, a beautiful wooden box with intricate carvings of mountains and cottonwood trees, perfect for storing her mother's jewelry. "Owen, this is beautiful," Adelaide said, running her fingers over the detailed work. "When did you make this?" "In the evenings while you were doing your mending," Owen admitted. "I wanted you to have something special." Adelaide's gift to him was more practical but no less meaningful. She had spent weeks secretly sewing him a new winter coat, using heavy wool she had purchased months ago and lined with fur from pelts he had provided. When he tried it on, it fit perfectly across his broad shoulders, and the look on his face told her he understood the hours of work that had gone into it. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "No one has made something like this for me since my mother died." They made love that night in front of the fire, the warmth of the flames dancing across their skin as they moved together with practiced ease now, their bodies knowing each other's rhythms and desires. January and February passed in a blur of storms and clear, cold days. Owen made short trips to check his trap lines when the weather allowed, never gone more than a few days, and always returning to Adelaide with relief evident in every line of his body. Adelaide continued to work on the homestead as best she could in winter conditions, and together they made plans for spring.
"I want to expand the cabin,"
Owen said one evening as they studied their small space. "Add another room, maybe even a second floor. We need more space." "We do," Adelaide agreed. She hesitated, then placed a hand over her stomach. "Especially since I think we will be adding to our family come late summer." Owen went completely still, his eyes widening. "You are with child?" "I think so," Adelaide said. "I am almost certain. Are you happy?" For answer, Owen swept her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. When he pulled back, there were tears in his eyes. "Happy does not begin to cover it," he said. "Adelaide, you have given me everything I never knew I wanted. A home, a wife I love more than life itself, and now a child. I am the most fortunate man alive." The rest of winter took on new meaning as they prepared not just for spring, but for the baby that would arrive with the turning seasons. Owen became even more protective, insisting Adelaide rest more and let him handle the heavier chores. Adelaide tolerated his hovering with amused patience. Understanding it came from love and perhaps fear of losing her. When spring finally came, bringing with it melting snow and the first green shoots in the garden, Owen began work on expanding the cabin. He hired 2 men from Trinidad to help with the heavy construction, and together they added a large new bedroom and a proper kitchen. Adelaide watched the work progress with satisfaction, seeing their small homestead transform into a real family home. As her pregnancy progressed, Adelaide continued to work in her garden, planting seeds and tending her growing vegetables. She felt healthy and strong, despite the occasional discomfort, and she refused to be treated like an invalid. Owen learned to pick his battles, letting her do what she wanted while standing ready to help the moment she needed it. Summer arrived. hot and dry. Adelaide spent more time in the shade, her belly swelling with their growing child. Owen made only short trips to the mountains now, unwilling to be far from home in case the baby came early. He treated Adelaide with tender reverence, his large hands gentle on her stomach as he felt their child move. "I hope the baby has your eyes," Owen said one evening as they sat together watching the sunset, his hand resting on her belly where he could feel the baby kick. "I hope the baby has your strength," Adelaide replied, covering his hand with hers, "and your good heart." "I hope the baby has your courage," Owen said, "and your determination, and your mother's china plates, when they are old enough not to break them." Adelaide laughed, the sound full of joy and contentment. "We will teach them everything. How to shoot and how to track, how to plant a garden and how to survive in this hard country. Everything my father taught me and everything your father taught you, and we will teach them they are loved," Owen added. "That above all else." Labor came on a sweltering August afternoon, almost exactly a year after Adelaide had first met Owen at the trading post. The pain started in the morning, manageable at first, but growing in intensity as the hours passed. Owen sent for the doctor from Trinidad, as well as Martha Henderson and 2 other women experienced in childbirth. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Owen stayed close, holding Adelaide's hand when the women allowed it, his face drawn with worry and helplessness. He had faced grizzly bears and mountain lions, survived avalanches and blizzards, but watching Adelaide in pain was the hardest thing he had ever endured. Finally, as the sun reached its zenith the next day, a baby's cry filled the cabin. Adelaide, exhausted and soaked with sweat, sobbed with relief as Martha placed a tiny squalling bundle on her chest. "A boy," Martha said, smiling broadly, "a healthy, strong boy with a set of lungs that could wake the dead." Owen moved to Adelaide's side, staring down at their son with wonder in his eyes. The baby was red-faced and angry, tiny fists waving, but he was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair on his head. "He is beautiful," Owen said, his voice breaking. "Adelaide, you are amazing. You are so strong." "We made him together," Adelaide said, reaching up to touch Owen's face. "Our son." They named him Oliver after Owen's father, with the middle name of James after Adelaide's father. Oliver James Lancaster, born into the wild Colorado territory to parents who would teach him to be strong, capable, and above all, loved. The first months with a newborn were exhausting but joyful. Oliver was a demanding baby, waking frequently to nurse and requiring constant attention. But Owen proved to be a devoted father, taking over household tasks without complaint and walking the floor with Oliver for hours when the baby was fussy, singing old mountain songs in his deep voice. Until Oliver finally settled, Adelaide watched her husband with their son, seeing the tenderness with which Owen handled the tiny baby despite his large calloused hands, and fell in love with him all over again. He was everything she had hoped for in a partner, strong yet gentle, capable yet nurturing. Autumn came again, painting the mountains in gold and red. Oliver was 3 months old now, growing rapidly and beginning to smile and coo. Adelaide had recovered her strength and was back to her usual work, though now with a baby strapped to her back while she worked in the garden or fed the chickens. Owen made preparations for another trapping season, but this time he was more selective about where he went, choosing trap lines closer to home so he could return frequently. He hated being away from Adelaide and Oliver, and the separations were brief. One evening in late October, as they sat together by the fire with Oliver asleep in a cradle Owen had built, Adelaide broached a subject she had been thinking about for weeks. "I want to teach Oliver to shoot when he is old enough," she said. "The way my father taught me." Owen smiled. "I would expect nothing else. He should know how to protect himself and those he loves. But Adelaide, I also want him to have opportunities we did not have. There is talk of a school opening in Trinidad next year. When Oliver is old enough, I want him to be able to read and write properly, to have education. So do I." Adelaide agreed. "We can teach him so much, but formal education is important too. We want him to have choices, to be able to make his own way in the world, whether that is here in Colorado or somewhere else entirely. As long as he grows up knowing he is loved and knowing right from wrong, I think he will find his way," Owen said. Winter came again, and this time it brought new challenges with a baby in the house. But the expanded cabin was warmer and more comfortable, and they had planned well, with plenty of supplies stored. Oliver continued to grow, reaching the milestones that filled his parents with pride. His first laugh, his first time rolling over, his fascination with the world around him. Spring arrived, and with it new beginnings. Adelaide worked in her garden while Oliver played on a blanket nearby, Owen chopping wood or making repairs. They had settled into a rhythm, a life that was hard but deeply satisfying. It was on a warm May afternoon, when Oliver was 9 months old and pulling himself up to stand, that Adelaide made another announcement. "I am pregnant again," she told Owen as they worked together to repair a section of fence. "Not as far along as I was when I told you about Oliver, but I am certain." Owen's face split into a wide grin. "Another child," he said, pulling her into his arms carefully. "Adelaide, our family is growing." "Are you happy?" she asked, searching his face. "Happier than I have words for," Owen assured her. "I never imagined having one child, let alone two. You have given me a family, Adelaide, a real family." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, Adelaide handling it with more confidence now that she knew what to expect. Oliver continued to grow and develop, taking his first stumbling steps just before his first birthday, much to his parents' delight. This time, when labor came in late winter, it was shorter and less difficult than with Oliver. And when the midwife placed a tiny, perfect baby girl in Adelaide's arms, she felt a surge of love so intense it took her breath away. "A daughter," she whispered, studying the delicate features, the rosebud mouth, the tiny fingers that wrapped around her thumb. Owen leaned over them both, his expression one of pure wonder. "She is beautiful, just like her mother." They named her Abigail Rose, and she proved to be a calmer baby than her brother had been, sleeping longer and fussing less. Oliver, now a curious toddler, was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to touch her gently and bring her his toys. Life settled into a new pattern with 2 children. The homestead continued to thrive, expanded now to include more livestock and a larger garden. Owen's trapping continued to be profitable, and they were able to save money and make improvements. They talked about eventually buying more land, expanding their holdings. The years passed in a blur of activity and joy. Oliver grew into a strong, curious boy who followed his father everywhere, eager to learn about trapping and tracking. Adelaide taught him to read and write, using the books she had brought from Tennessee and new ones they purchased. When the school finally opened in Trinidad, Oliver attended, making friends and proving to be a quick student. Abigail grew into a spirited, adventurous little girl who looked like her mother but had her father's fearlessness. By the time she was 4, she was insisting on helping with everything, from feeding chickens to riding horses, much to Owen's amused concern. Adelaide and Owen's love only deepened with time. The passion of their early days matured into something even stronger, a partnership built on trust, respect, and deep affection. They still stole moments alone when the children were asleep, still found ways to make each other laugh, still looked at each other with the same wonder they had felt at the beginning. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Adelaide by taking her to Trinidad for a rare overnight trip without the children, who stayed with the Johnsons. They had dinner at the hotel, a luxury they rarely indulged in, and spent the night in a real bed with a soft mattress. "You ever regret it?" Owen asked as they lay together in the darkness. "Marrying a rough mountain man instead of someone more refined?" "Never," Adelaide said firmly, turning to face him. "Owen, you are the best man I have ever known. You are strong and kind and devoted to our family. Why would I regret that?" "I cannot give you fine things or an easy life," Owen said. "I do not want fine things or an easy life," Adelaide replied. "I want what we have built together, our home, our children, this life. You gave me all of that." Owen kissed her deep and slow. "You saved my life that day in the trading post," he said. "But you did more than that. You gave me a reason to live, something beyond mere survival. I love you, Adelaide Lancaster, more today than the day we married, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." Years continued to pass. Oliver grew into a young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's determination and intelligence. He took over more and more of the work on the homestead, giving Owen more freedom to pursue other interests. Eventually, Oliver announced his intention to marry a girl from Trinidad, a sweet-natured young woman named Sarah who Adelaide approved of immediately. Abigail, meanwhile, proved to be as proficient with firearms as her mother, taking to shooting with natural talent. She also inherited Adelaide's independence and stubborn streak, causing her parents both pride and occasional worry as she pushed boundaries and insisted on doing things her own way. More grandchildren came as Oliver and Sarah started their own family, building a cabin on the edge of Adelaide and Owen's property. The original homestead that Adelaide had maintained alone for 2 years had grown into a small family compound, a legacy of hard work and love. On a warm summer evening, many years after that fateful day in the trading post, Adelaide and Owen sat together on the porch of their expanded cabin. They were both older now, Owen's hair shot through with silver and Adelaide's showing streaks of gray. But they still sat close together, Owen's arm around her shoulders, watching the sun set over the mountains. "Do you remember the day we met?" Adelaide asked, her head resting on Owen's shoulder. "Every detail," Owen replied. "You drew faster than I have ever seen anyone move, and your aim was perfect. I thought you were the most remarkable woman I had ever seen." "I thought you were the most handsome man I had ever seen," Adelaide admitted, "and the kindest. You looked at me like I was someone special, not just a strange woman living alone." "You were special," Owen said. "You are special. Adelaide, you took a lonely mountain man and gave him everything. A home, a family, a reason to be grateful for every single day. I have lived a good life because of you." "We built this life together," Adelaide corrected gently. "Everything we have, we created as partners." In the distance they could hear Oliver's children playing, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Abigail was visiting with her beau, a young rancher from the next valley over, their voices a low murmur from the garden. "We did well, did we not?" Owen asked. "Our children are strong and good. They know how to survive in this hard country, but they also know how to love." "We did very well," Adelaide agreed. "Better than I ever imagined possible." Owen tightened his arm around her, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I love you, Adelaide. As much today as the day I first said it, probably more." "I love you too," Adelaide replied, tilting her face up to meet his kiss. Even after all these years, his touch still made her heart race, still made her feel cherished and desired. They sat together as the stars came out, one by one, watching the sky darken and the mountains fade to shadows. Their life together had been hard at times, demanding constant work and vigilance, but it had also been filled with joy and love, with the satisfaction of building something lasting together. Adelaide thought back to the frightened, lonely woman she had been in the trading post that day, making the split-second decision to reveal her secret and save a stranger's life. She could never have imagined where that decision would lead, the love she would find and the family she would build. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Owen asked. "For being worth saving," Adelaide replied. "For giving me everything I did not know I needed." Owen laughed, the sound warm and content. "That works both ways, you know. You saved my life, but you also gave it meaning." They sat together in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. The wild Colorado territory had tested them repeatedly, but they had met every challenge side by side, their love growing stronger with each passing year. Inside the cabin, the home they had expanded and improved together. Adelaide's mother's china gleamed on its shelf, now joined by other treasures accumulated over the years. The pistols she had carried that day hung above the fireplace, cleaned and oiled but no longer needed for daily protection. They served now as reminders of who she had been and how far they had come. As the moon rose, casting silver light across the homestead, Owen helped Adelaide to her feet. They went inside together, hand in hand, ready for rest and renewal before another day of their shared life began. Tomorrow would bring more work, more challenges, more moments of joy and frustration and love. But for tonight, they had this moment of peace, this certainty that they had chosen right all those years ago, when a mountain man and a woman with pistols under her skirts decided to build a life together. Whatever else might come, whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face it together just as they always had, and that they both knew was more than enough. It was everything.